Welcome to the Fantasy Grimoire podcast. And today we have the incredible Gretchen Powell-Fox with us.
Hi! I'm so excited to
So,
be
so
here.
glad to have you here. And especially since after I had Alex on a few episodes ago, she was like, you need Gretchen on the podcast ASAP. She was like insisting. And I was like, well, I'm not going to deny her that request. So I was like, let me reach out to Gretchen. So I would love to hear from you. What convinced you to say yes to this baby little podcast of mine?
Oh my gosh, it was a no-brainer. Are you kidding me? I was so excited when you reached out. I love Alex as well, and she's always said the best things about you. I've followed you for a little while, and I know that you have like the most amazing personality. And honestly, just any opportunity to like yap books in this industry and all of the things, I'm always down for. So there was no question for me.
I love that. Gretchen, I want to talk a little bit about your dual heritage before we move on to your recent release, Smoke and Scar, which that needs like a whole separate discussion. Dual heritage is something that I have in common with you, and I know it's a really interesting thing to navigate. And you've been very clear about it on your page. And I would love to hear from you. How has that not only shaped you, but how has it impacted your writing, if in any way?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm half Chinese and I'm half white. And I mean, it's like the answer is like in all the ways and in none of the ways, kind of, because it's just like who I am, right? Like I've always been who I am and had the parents that I have. But I am very proud of my, biracial heritage. And it's like in my author bio and everything. My dad was in the State Department, which is how he met my mom overseas. And because of that, I also grew up overseas for the most part. So yeah, I've lived in like a bunch of different countries, had the opportunities to experience life in a lot of different cultures. And I think that has been so formative in the way that I approach writing and world building and storytelling, and really being able to kind of draw from those multiple things. Representation is also extraordinarily important to me. So in my first books, the protagonist is, I mean, it's not explicitly stated, but like she is biracial. And then in, my fantasy world, it was really important to me for Smoke and Scar to have like a really wide range of different, not only like skin colors and hair colors and stuff like that, but like literal, like magical races and stuff like that. And really trying to draw on painting a world as rich as the one that I have grown up in.
Oh, wow. I love that. That is so beautiful. I mean, tell me you're an author when telling me you're an author. If you don't mind me asking, because I can obviously hear you're American, but you don't have such a strong American accent like that I have come to expect just in my exposure. So like give me like 3 places that you grew up as a child.
Yeah, so I was born in Hong Kong, and I spent the 3 main places that I grew up were I spent quite a few years of my childhood in Poland, and then also in Taiwan. I spent 3 of my years in high school, and then Canada. I spent 2 different stints up in Canada, and then in the States, in and out from there. So, yeah, kind of like all over the place.
That's incredible. I mean, I was chatting to my Dutch doctor the other day, and like he's pretty close to my age, and he was like, "Oh yeah, he grew up in Hong Kong, and that's why he is just very different from normal Dutch doctors." And I was like, "That makes sense."
Yeah, it's really one of those things where I think, as a kid, I was such a brat about it. I was like, you're ruining my life by making me move all over the world. As an adult, I'm like, how cool is it that I got to live in these places? And like traveling internationally is so much easier when you already live like outside of the States. So I got to go on like school field trips to other countries and stuff like this. That's the sort of stuff doesn't happen, in the States. So it's just like, I'm very, very appreciative of all the opportunities that I had, like because of that.
So I remember when I was 13, totally giving my age away here, Bon Jovi, It's My Life just came out, and I wanted a belly ring. And my mom was like, you're not getting one. And I was like blasting the song through the house because she was ruining my life because all my friends were having belly rings and I was the odd one out. So yeah, I think we all have that in common in some way or another.
The perspective that you get kind of like on the other side. And I have kids now too. And I'm like, man, I can't wait until they tell me that they hate me and that I'm ruining their lives. Because like, I know it'll happen one day, but like, obviously I'm super, super grateful to my parents now because they gave me all these cool opportunities that definitely helped shape who I am, not just as like a writer, but as a person.
I'm originally from South Africa. And there's a tiny little place outside of South Africa called Namibia. And it's kind of like a desert by the ocean. I know it's very confusing. It is what it is. And I spent a good part of my childhood growing up on a cattle farm. And most people are like, well, that's weird. And I'm like, well, no, it really isn't. It's like, it's pretty normal to me.
It was what we did back then.
That was how I grew up as a child. Like, we would go to the flamingo flay and watch the sunset. And I couldn't appreciate it at the time because, I mean, I was a brat. But like now,
if only we knew back then.
Yeah. But now, looking back on it, I 100% can admit that it's helped shape me into the person I am today. And I happen to like who I am. So it's a win-win all around.
Exactly. I love that. I think that being able to zoom out from our life as we have gotten older and like see the things that, you know, hey, that's pretty cool. Or like, I can actually tie this way that I feel about something now to like something else that happened. Like, you know, that's the kind of perspective that is really like very neat about getting older and being able to kind of like reflect on the life that we've had. And so I love that.
I want to talk a little bit about Smoke and Scar. But before Smoke and Scar, you wrote your first book, and then you took a big break before you came back to write that. So I just want to chat about, why was that break so important for you, and what made you decide to come back?
Yeah, so I published my very first book in 2012, and it was it's called Terra. It's a dystopian novel. It was back in the early aughts, you know, dystopian was the hot thing, and now it's like, you know, romantasy or whatever. I'm not going to say that like the break that I took was really that intentional. It was more like, I didn't know at the time, but I have ADHD, and I was really into writing my first book, publishing it, and it did quite well, especially given like the different set of resources that indie authors had back then versus like the kinds of stuff we have now. And then I, you know, started writing the sequel, and I lost the spark, the you know, motivation to really keep driving forward. And I don't know if it was like because of just my ADHD brain, or if it was like self-imposed pressure, or just like the rest of my life kind of falling into place, new jobs and et cetera. And then it's just, again, like one of those things where it doesn't seem like it's been a decade until you like look back and you're like, oh wait, 2012 was like a very long time ago. And I have had an entire life between then, multiple jobs, I got married, I had kids, et cetera. So all of that happened, and there's no unhappening it, right? But I also really dove during that same break. I also took kind of like a hiatus from like reading in general. And I think that was the connecting thing that drove me back into wanting to write and like tell my stories again, is that I dove headfirst back into reading. And very soon after, you know, voraciously starting to devour more and more books again, I was like, it's happening. Like the spark is sparking, you know, the stories are connecting. And I really wanted to be able to tell my own. And I was in my fantasy girl era, so I knew I wanted to write fantasy and really try my hand at that level of world building, kind of epic stakes. But I was not going to be able to do that without kind of like tying a bow on what I had left lingering from the past. So I finished the second book for my dystopian duology before I published Smoke and Scar. And then I was able to really like focus fully on this next frontier of my writing career, I guess.
But I think that's such an important message that you're putting out there, because, you know, if I look at it from the other side, I've fallen into the trap myself where I'm like, I just need to churn out all these books, go. And I think that the taking the break part, which looks different for everyone, is so important, because how can you be a creative, because I mean, that's what we are, and how can you tap into that spark and that motivation if you're burnt out? Because we are in the era of burnt out authors right now. And I love that you're so comfortable talking about that, and you're so proud of it, because look at the success now of Smoke and Scar, and it's really paid off for you. So I know this sounds weird, but I'm really proud of you.
Well, thank you very much. That means so much to me. Yeah, do I think that maybe things could have gone differently if I had stuck with it? Would I be in a different place with my career right now? There's so many lingering questions that will never be able to be answered, right? Mm-hmm. But with the story that I crafted in Smoke and Scar, where I see it going, the amazing reception that I've had for this book. You know, obviously if things had been different, like I wouldn't have written this book at this time and like been in this place. So all's well that ends well, really, I think is kind of the grand takeaway.
If I look at the first 2 series that I produced, don't get me wrong, I love them. At the time, they were the series I needed to write, but they're not my soul series. I don't know how else to explain it.
No,
like
I
my
get it
current,
100%.
yeah, like my current one, it's so easy to write. Like I don't know how I can't type fast enough because it's just flowing and the way these characters are living in my head. And I have no regrets because I never would have been able to write this series if I hadn't written the first 2. And that was an important lesson for me to learn.
1,000%. And I mean, obviously I'm a different person now than I was 12, 13, 14 years ago. My writing is different. I did do a revision of my first book before I published the sequel, just because I was like, oh, I need to like just polish it up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it in a very different way than I'm proud of Smoke and Scar, you know? So it's like, it formed me and it's a huge part of me, but it's not like this is who I am. You know what I mean? So.
But it's so funny that you mentioned that because I'm finally getting to the place where I can read my older work. Before I was like, kill me now. This is so good.
I think a lot of authors struggle with that for sure.
But now I'm like, okay, well, there were some people that actually like that. So maybe I'm being too hard on myself. So I'm also learning to give myself a little bit of grace in between this as well.
It's hard, and that comes in waves too. Like sometimes I feel genuinely like I can, you know, like have the perspective to read my work and be like, hey, like this is pretty good. And then literally like an hour later I'll read something and be like, who wrote this drivel? This is terrible, you know? So I think it's very normal.
It's so true. Like I wrote a line last night about the fragility of the human mind and how it breaks. And I was like, damn, I was like, where did that come from? And then the next moment I'm writing this drivel, as you called it, and I was like, who am I? Like, just stop. Just enough.
1,000%. One of my favorite things to post like on social media is being like, I'm a writer, and then like posting something from my, you know, obviously very first rough draft and being like, so-and-so smiled at me and I smiled back at them, and then 2 sentences later I say the word smiled again and then I'm smiling or like whatever the case would be, like I'm a writer.
Do you know what my worst one is? Nod. Nod is
yes, nodding, smirking is a big one for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then just the number of times I use the word eyes or like gaze in, I'm like, how else am I supposed to talk about the way, like what they're looking at though?
So true. So true. Neurodiversity. We've been speaking about this so far in the episode. It's something that's important to you, not just only as a person, as an author, as subject matter in your books. We've made some great progress in the inclusion space in our books so far in the industry, but it almost feels like we still have a long way to go. So I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on that? Number 2, what do you hope your readers take away from the inclusion in your characters and in your story?
So I do think that it is, in the bookish space and in general, getting better. People are talking about it more, you know, obviously lots of terrible things about the pandemic, but one of the things that I think came out as kind of a positive was people's willingness to kind of look inward, and the way it like broke down a lot of our masking and our defense mechanisms and stuff and allowed people to realize like, oh wait, maybe my brain works like a little bit differently than I always thought it did. And that's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was almost 30. So, you know, kind of one of those like crystallizing moments where you're like, wow, maybe my childhood would have been really different if I had known this about myself. Not saying that it really would have changed anything in terms of like what I did, but just like, there's something really powerful in like knowing yourself and knowing how you work. And with, you know, my current book and my current series, kind of like having the knowledge of what happened with me kind of petering out after writing Tara, and knowing how to like counteract that and really follow my muse and lean in, knowing that like that's what I have to do, is working for me. So yeah, it's really important to me. I think that I have been honestly like very, not surprised, but like, I don't know what the word to use is. Like, I think that there's a lot of neurodiverse authors basically is kind of what I think. I think you see a lot of authors talk about whether, you know, it's because they have ADHD or they are on the spectrum, or they have just like anxiety or whatever the case is. Like, you see more and more people being open about that, and like the way that that informs our creative work and our focus and our, you know, the stories that we want to tell. I think that people are talking about it more and more. I always think there's going to be more room to grow and further to go with this and any kind of identity stuff that is on the more marginalized side, right? That's not like on the straight and narrow. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers the question, but basically, like, I feel like we're heading in a really positive direction, and it's going to always be very important to me to just be open about all of the different facets of who I am as an author and as a person.
One of my first guests, where her character was something, I mean, granted, it's maybe not appropriate for teenagers to read, but I was looking for that representation of someone that was different growing up, because I mean, I know you can't really see it here on camera, but like, I'm really tall, like really tall, okay? And for me, I'm like this giant kid where the rest of the girls are like barely taking me to my shoulder. And like all the girls, because I went to boarding school, so all the girls were swapping clothes, and here I can't even find shoes in the women's department. I have to go to the men's department. So like, for me, I was just looking for someone that was different. And so that I could kind of get that message that it was okay to be different, not to feel so embarrassed for not fitting in. And I think that's also where I was going to say the inclusion part is so important, where, hey guys, it's okay if you behave a bit different, you look a bit different, you act a bit different. That is fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where I think us as authors, we have such an important job to do to keep making that normal.
Yes, 100%. And it's not even just like that it's fine, but it's celebrated, that it is like, you know, something defining about the main characters in these novels or these important side characters, you know, and whatever the actual difference is, right? Like whether or not it's, you know, neurodiversity or their racial identity or their gender identity or a disability, you know, like all people, I think, in any creative medium want to feel seen. And for the longest time in all media forms, it was so hard to find that. And so, you know, you have this kind of like new frontier of books and TV and movies and stuff where people are feeling more seen. They're seeing different body shapes, different, you know, like ways of being and ways of thinking and racial backgrounds and just like all of the things, right? So that's always going to be top of mind for me, for sure. And like in writing fantasy, I think it's like a little bit, it's both harder and not, because you get to literally do whatever you want, but also like trying to make like the real world comparisons, I think, can sometimes be a little bit trickier. So just kind of my goal with my current series has always been to just showcase a broad array of whatever the case is.
I do write urban fantasy, which is a bit different than for you, but like I try and create these scenarios where my characters can kind of lean into that. Hey, stand up for yourself. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that with more of the kind of like high fantasy world that I've created, I think one of the ways that I try to like support that without it being like a, you know, exact real world scenario where someone's like in an office or, you know, whatever the case is like the normalization of things. Like, it's very important for my world to be super like queer normative, like different races, different body types, different everything. Like, it's all just very normal. Like, it like a great example of this is like, I don't know if you've ever seen the show, TV show Schitt's Creek, but like it's one of my absolute favorites. And I remember watching this interview with Dan Levy and Eugene Levy where they were basically talking about how like it was never going to be like a plot line of like this small town reacting negatively to like David's sexuality or something like that. It's like woven in throughout the series because it's like a big plot line, but it's not like your stereotypical like small town, like, you know, like going and get like none of that, because he wanted to establish just like the normalization of this world that gets to focus in on the characters and every facet of them. And anyway, it just really stuck with me, how powerful it can be to see that painted. And while the stories of like overcoming like bigotry and stuff, I mean, there's plenty of that still like, in my book, but like, you know, like in whatever aspect it is, like just seeing that kind of like baseline also be represented, I think is also, it can be very powerful as well. So I love that there are so many different ways to lift up, you know, that.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about Smoke and Scar because you have just released, and from what I have seen, it has done phenomenally well, which I think is any author's dream right there. But also, let's not take away from the hard work you put into it. Like that didn't just happen. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what did launch week look for you? What went into behind the scenes? Are there maybe any lessons you would take away from next time? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, awesome. I'm still reeling a little bit from it, honestly. I mean, it hasn't been that long, at the time of filming this since the book has come out, and I've been so blown away by the support and the reception. And I mean, honestly, it sounds like very cliche and very cheesy, but like the credit really does go to the readers who have responded to this story and are sharing about it to their friends and posting about it and stuff like that. But I will say that I did hustle pretty hard leading up to this release. I was very, very invested in being on social media, making sure that I'm like connecting with my readers. I did like a very big ARC advanced reader campaign. Just kind of like, I'm so proud of this book, and I genuinely, like, without trying to sound like toot, like, I think it's a great book. So I wanted to give it its best shot at other people hopefully feeling similarly. And so, I think that the biggest thing, I mean, I've certainly learned a lot of lessons. I would say that like what my like strategy for marketing comes down to is having written a great book. I found a cover artist who I'm like obsessed with, and the cover itself, I mean, I am like super, super proud of just like the cover of the book. And I think that that's gone a long way. And then I have invested very, very heavily in character art, like from the get-go. I think that my main female character in particular, has like a really cool design. She has purple hair, and she's got wings, and she's the Fae. She's the one who is the like, it's a little bit, like that flipped trope where like she's the like centuries old Fae and he's the human, and she's always saving his life and stuff like that. And people have responded really well to that. So my lessons that I took away from it are that character art is a wonderful way of marketing your book. It is 1000% not necessary to get as much character art as I have. Like, I am like well and truly addicted to it. So like, please, I hope nobody like looks at my like page on Instagram and are like, oh, like I better like start like funneling thousands of dollars away for this, because like nobody needs to do that. But I love it, and I adore the bookish artist community, and I love being able to support them. So like that's really important to me too. Huge. Doing a digital art campaign was also really great. It allowed me to connect with readers way ahead of the book being out and really feel like I was making an impact with this story, just by even people sliding into my DMs like as they're reading, or connecting with me about just how they liked it. And doing ARCs is also that like it's perfectly fine to focus only on digital ARCs, and sending out digital ARCs. As an indie, sending out physical art copies is really an expense. And I think that for the most part, people are more than happy to read their ARCs digitally. And so you can, like reserve physical ARCs for like giveaways, or, like special celebrations or raffles or whatever the case is. But being able to kind of focus in on like what makes sense for your bandwidth and your budget is always going to be your number one priority as an indie, where you have like, you're wearing all of the hats, right? I'm the writer, and I'm the marketer, and I'm the person managing my art campaign and like managing my different social media platforms and stuff like that. So that was a lot of babbling about this, but
no, that was actually a lot of very good information, because like that was something I also struggled with in my last art campaign. The amount of paperbacks being requested. And especially for me sitting in Amsterdam, I was like, that shipping is just a nightmare. Sure, I can send directly from Amazon, but like it still adds up. And I actually made an exception for 2 people only, because they did have a bit of a medical condition, and I just really liked the way they asked. And I was like, listen, for that, I'm going to make a plan for you. Yes. And they were really sweet and really supportive about it. And I think it's this weird balance as well with ARCs, because we both need each other. Like that part's not going away. And I think sometimes people are so supportive, but then there's also a little bit of entitlement that we need to deal with. And I'm just like, I'm a one-woman show funding this completely on my own. Like, can we compromise?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky, because ARCs are strategy that traditional publishers also use, obviously. And of course, the budget behind a traditional publisher and their reach is so different than like just one person kind of doing it on their own. But to a reader, they don't always understand that distinction, or like such a long amount of time may pass between when they like see an arc and they apply for it, and then when like they get their confirmation, like and I do get it from that perspective of being like, they don't always remember that like it's just me, and like that kind of thing. So I try to be sensitive to that. I also tried to be very like laissez-faire about arcs kind of after they went out, and just kind of like, hey, like I would love for you guys to join my Discord if you want to talk about the book. I would love, obviously, like I send out email reminders and stuff like that, but I'm definitely not like hunting anybody down. Like it's kind of like, once it's out in your hands, it's out in your hands, and I hope that you enjoy the book, and I hope that you want to leave a review. But now there's so much other stuff that we have to do and have to continue doing, especially if we're like still writing and still, working on future books and like all this stuff, that a lot of, I think, the decisions, not just for arcs, but in general as an indie author, comes down to like what you can cut back or cut out in terms of your own mental load. Or, I'm a terrible delegator. Like I do have a PA, and she'll be the first one to tell you that I like never ask her to do anything. Like I make a lot, almost all of my social media content I make myself. I'm starting to get better about like accepting help with that too, and asking for help with that too. But yeah, I just like, it's impossible. It's literally impossible. I could work 4 full-time jobs doing just like indie author stuff easily, like with the number of things you could be doing at any given time, right? Yeah. Like I could put 40 hours a week into social media content creation. I could put 40 hours a week into like the actual writing process. I could put 40 hours a week into the logistics of like formatting, or like reaching out to, other authors for newsletter swaps, or just like all of the other kind of marketing stuff. I could easily put like a full week's worth of work into just researching like what people are doing and trying to like analyze the market, and like trying to see like what's on trend and what I should be doing next, or like so again, like the TLDR of all of that babbling is that we do have to kind of pick and choose the things that are the most important to us as we forge forward, and see where that's going to land us. And I've been very fortunate that it's all, so far my decisions have worked out for the most part. So
here's me going at the end of 2024. Oh, I'd really love to do a podcast, but I actually don't have time. Come back from holiday in 2025, pull together a podcast brand in like 3 weeks and start recording and teaching myself how. And I'm like, so, I really didn't have time, hey? It's actually amazing. Like, I agree with you. You kind of like box smart. So I know on the days that I record and I edit, I don't write. On the days that I write, I kind of have these little time boxes for all the little things that I need to do. And sometimes, and I've referenced this on the podcast before, perfectionism has never been my goal, because progress is so much better. Some of my friends sometimes go, oh, but how do you get it all done? And I'm like, you just do it. Mm-hmm. Throw the perfectionism out. Like, I know that's easy for me to say, but like it's something I can really relate to.
I think that is honestly, it's such an important point for anyone who's looking to dive into, especially like indie authordom, because you'll see this same advice told over and over again from far more experienced and more successful authors than me, which is like the best thing that you can keep doing to like further your career as an author is to write the next book and write the next book and just keep writing books. And as we've already touched on, like we are better writers, we're better storytellers with these current books than we were with our first books. Like you can't not, like there's nothing that will teach that other than doing it. And so like the waiting for 10 years to perfect your manuscript before you start the querying process or whatever is really only going to leave you, I think, like a little bit disappointed, because it's, you're adding on so much additional time to something you've sunk so much time into. And then like, I mean, I have a lot of feelings about like the, trad versus like indie and like the different paths that people can take. And there's really no like right or wrong answer no matter what. But I think that forging forward and like prioritizing progress over perfection is key, no matter what path you take. 1,000%.
Fully agree. I do want to change the subject though to my severe hair envy that I have, because I tried to dye my hair pink last year, so I'm actually very gray. Like, but I've got like some blonde ends left here. But like I am naturally very dark. If you ask my mother when I was born, I was like pitch black, and I've just been pitch black forever. So yeah, as you can imagine, the dyeing my hair pink did not go well. I ended up with like a version of orange, and I was like, well, it's hair, it grows back. Like I'm not worried about it. And then it turned into blonde 3 days later, and I was like, okay, I guess blondes have more fun. But but you change your hair color frequently. So number one, tell us your ways, and number two, tell us the story behind that, because I feel like
so having fun hair is kind of my thing. It has been now for a very, very long time. I am very much of the same mindset. Like it's just hair. It will always grow back. And it's like the least permanent way you can kind of like really have fun with your, physical expression because of that fact. Like you always either dye over it or chop it all off and start fresh. So it's been, I think at this point, literally every single shade under the rainbow, including an actual rainbow. At one point I had like rainbow hair. It started like purple and it went down to red, and it was like really difficult to maintain though. So it only lasted a few months. But yeah, so as we already established, I am half Chinese. My hair is very dark naturally. This is my natural color at the top. And I bleached the shit out of it. I mean, it's really fried in order to get to be these fun colors. But I kind of like it. It's like my thing. And I never feel more like myself than when I have like fun colored hair. So, and it changes. Yeah, exactly. Like nails and, exactly. So yeah, I think it's really fun. And I knew from the get-go that when I was crafting this like fantasy world for Smoke and Scar, that like I wanted people to have fun colored hair, because hello, they have literally like wings and magic. Like why wouldn't they be born with purple hair coming out of their head, right? So that's also been very fun for me to kind of like be like, just color everywhere, color.
So the one time that a few years ago in Amsterdam, I went to a hairdresser where English wasn't an option. So I spoke Afrikaans, which is similar to Dutch, but he was another expat. So we just got by with this broken translation. Anyway, I asked for fire engine red. I ended up with purple. Now, I wasn't mad at it. I was not mad, because I was like, this is actually really cool. But I learned a week later that that was probably the most difficult color to maintain, because like my bath looked like a murder scene each night when I washed my hair. Yeah. And then like my pillow was just like stained.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. I have like a black, dark purple towel that I use for my hair. Like I make sure that I never go to sleep with like wet hair, because it will just like leach onto our pillowcases and all of our towels and like everything. Like,
I guess you don't wear white often then.
I don't wear white very often. I actually even I have these like over-ear headphone things that I have, and they're like a beigeish color. And at one point I wore them right after dyeing my hair, and I took them off and they had been like colored purple. It's like, it does get on everything. But it's the price you pay, I guess, to kind of experiment with these things. I will say your attitude is right though, when it comes to having fun colored hair, or just, I think in general, being like, you know what? I'm not mad at it. Like I can roll with this. It's that whole like progress over perfection concept, but like for this, because like this will fade into like, I'm not sure. I added a little bit of blue to it this time, so maybe it'll fade a little warmer, but it faded to this like very pale pink the last time I did purple. And like, you never really know what exactly you're going to get, I feel like, because I do all my hair myself. So I'm like, as long as it's kind of fun, I can vibe with it. And if I don't like it, then I'll just wash it a lot more, and then it'll fade faster and I'll dye it again. So
I look at this like unspoken rule that we have here in Amsterdam, is that, to be blunt, no one gives a shit what you wear or what you dress like or what you look like. The only rule is be authentic. So, I mean, I remember I was walking down like this big strip to work one morning, and it was like autumn. Okay, so it wasn't like super cold. And obviously we have the canals and whatnot. And then I saw this chick, I kid you not, wearing a bathing suit. It was like 9 degrees. I'm sorry, I don't know what the American metric equivalent is for that. And she was wearing like just her sneakers, and she was walking down in her bathing suit, and I was like, you know what, girl, you go and own that. Yeah, you own that bathing suit in this like 10-degree weather. Yeah, I would not, but you do you, boo.
I 1,000%. I think that my attitude over the years has definitely like shifted into like, good for her, like good for him, like you do you. And I feel that way a lot of the time with books too, like being like, you know what, not my cup of tea, but like good for them, or like that was a choice, good for them. Like I'm here for it. I'm here for it no matter what, because like I really genuinely have found that there's something for everybody out there, and not everything is for somebody, you know what I mean? So
so that is actually a perfect segue into our next question. I want to chat to you about the Empyrean series. This has come up a little bit in the past with some other guests, but I keep referencing it because it has taken the book world by storm. This year we had Onyx Storm released, and I know it broke a couple of records.
Oh yeah.
It's been met with some people love it, some people hate it. I think we all loved Fourth Wing, well, most of us. We had mixed feelings about Iron Flame, and now Onyx Storm has like divided, I think, the fandom even more. What is it about this series, do you think, that gets people so absolutely feral?
It's a great question. I think that you could probably approach it from a lot of different angles in terms of what it is that appeals to kind of like folks en masse. With this, I think that kind of touching on what we had already discussed a little bit earlier, the fact that Violet is living with a disability, and it's so clearly and accurately described based on Rebecca Yarros's like lived experience with it, I think is a huge thing for representation, for girls being seen. I think that like she really nailed the formula for like Xaden. I remember reading Onyx Storm earlier this year and being like, it's been a minute since I like read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I didn't do a reread before it came out, and being like, oh yeah, like we'll see. And then like Xaden says like his first line, and I was like, oh, I remember. I remember. I just think she like really like baked a really great book boyfriend in him. And the girlies love him. I think that the world that she created is just fantastical enough that folks and readers who are maybe not generally like fantasy people find it interesting but accessible, and I think that she leans in very heavily to like found family with all of the different characters and the kind of like main crew that she establishes in the book. And that I think as like a trope, or I mean, not even a trope, because I feel like almost every book like has like a great cast of characters that you really love. People really respond well to that. So like you can kind of like pluck out like the different personality types that people go to. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really truly next level in terms of like comparison for like Fourth Wing and the Empyrean series to literally like anything else. Like, obviously I think ACOTAR is the only other thing that is like on the same level really. And I find that it is interesting seeing the discourse about Onyx Storm specifically, because it does get so much heavier into expanding that world and like is far less of that kind of contained like singular story arc that like Fourth Wing had really, where it's like Violet goes to Dragon Rider College and like her goal is to like get a dragon and like all of this stuff, and it's like kind of contained, and obviously it hints at the larger world story. But now that we're in book 3 of a 5-book series, it's all about laying this groundwork for the larger conflict and kind of like playing the long game. And I think that people who are maybe more used to more self-contained stories are struggling with that, whereas people who are big fantasy series readers are not struggling with it. So I think that that's probably where like the two camps are kind of like starting to emerge from.
If I look at myself as a reader, right? I'm a vibes girly. Are you making me feel something? Like, are you giving me these vibes? If you do that and you give me a great story that keeps me on my toes, keeps me guessing, you have me. Take my money. Like that is it. But where I sometimes struggle as a reader is that I don't necessarily care about writing style, because I mean, I'm not reading your book for the writing style. I'm reading your book for the story. So I'll give you an example. I've heard people complaining about Zodiac Academy in the past, that they found it to be poorly written, and I was like, no, maybe I'm just a slut for dark academia.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I do think that, being in the court of public opinion with any kind of creative work is always going to bring people with like vastly differing opinions. And the very thing, and this is something that I've learned very quickly with this book, the exact thing that one person is like, I love this, like this was my favorite thing about this book, literally will be the exact same thing that somebody else will be like, I really hated this, you know? And so the concept of being able to like please 100% of people 100% of the time doesn't exist. I think it's really difficult for authors, especially indie authors who are so like tuned in with their readership and with their community of readers, which is amazing because I love connecting with and talking to the people who are reading my books. But like having the removal to like remember my preferences for the book and like my story and my characters is very challenging because people have like, this is my favorite character, put more of them in it, or like, oh, please don't let anything happen to so and so, or like I would love to see blank. And like these are all amazing things that they care so deeply about expressing. But ultimately, like it's supposed to still be my story. So like, how do I stay focused on that? And so I can only imagine that being applied on like this grand scale where people are so passionate about the characters and the story and where things are going with like Fourth Wing or with A Court of Thorns and Roses, or, you know, like, I mean, any number of these like, you know, stories that are getting bigger and bigger these days. And so, yeah, I think that, I don't even know where the original question is that we were going with this, but basically, it's awesome. And also people's opinions about like the writing style. Like there are lots of people who like to be contrarian for the sake of nothing else, but like a book is too popular. So they'll be like, oh, that book, I keep seeing it everywhere, I know I'm not going to like it. And they go into reading it with that mindset. And so the first thing they'll usually pick apart is like the writing style or something like that, right? I think that there's, you know, people are always going to have preferences, first person versus third person versus present tense versus past tense. But, you know, like people always have their reading preferences, just like people have their writing preferences. And you should not be like apologizing for not liking a certain way of writing, but don't like shit on the author because it's not your personal cup of tea, right? Like this concept of being like, well, so-and-so is a bad writer is like, it's like people saying like Taylor Swift can't sing. Like she can sing. Like that's a dumb thing to say. Like,
I fully agree. Listen, I went to the Eras
Tour. Like her, but you cannot say like she can't sing. Like that's a stupid thing to say.
I went to the Eras Tour in Amsterdam, so I just want to like say up front, like I am not a Swiftie by the normal terms, but I enjoy her music. Like I actually think she's a phenomenal businesswoman. Like that's my first thing. And specifically with the Reputation album, I'm a Reputation girl through and through. Midnight's is number 2. And I didn't mind the Tortured Poets department. It was maybe just a little bit too chill for me. I like something a little bit more upbeat. But when she came to Amsterdam for the Eras Tour, I was like, 100% yes. Like she is never going to be as phenomenal as she is right now. I mean, for her to train a year to pull a 3-hour set and sing that entire thing live, I was like, yeah, I'm going. And I remember watching this, and I was just sitting there in awe because it wasn't that she was doing like all these like massive dance moves, whatever. It was very simple, very straightforward, but it was effective. And I was like, I'm sorry, you don't have to like her, but you cannot take away from her that she is fucking phenomenal. End of discussion.
I am a Swiftie, and I also agree. Like, I'm never going to like shove anything that I like down someone else's throat, but like, just again, kind of taking that step back, zooming out, looking at something objectively. Like, you can't say just because you personally don't like it, it like isn't blank. It isn't amazing. It isn't a phenomenon. It isn't impressive. Like, you know, and you can apply that to anything that you just may personally they may not be your cup of tea, a celebrity, a singer, a book, a movie, whatever. But you can be like, I can appreciate what is being done here. And I think that like, I am a Fourth Wing fan, but like that's a good example, I think, if someone should be able to like look at that and be like, you know what, the book wasn't for me, but like, damn, if it isn't like doing its thing, converting fans and being a gateway into fantasy for so many readers. And you see stories all the time on like Book Talk or Bookstagram where people are like, Fourth Wing or ACOTAR was like the first fantasy book that I really read. And since then I've read like 100 more. And then they're being like, but actually, have you read The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson? Because, you know, like, and then they're like deep into fantasy and it's great. Right. So.
No, and I love this discussion because I think you're also helping me look at things from a different way. And a theme I keep seeing coming up on the podcast is it's okay not to like something. And I mean, the episode that I released recently with Jordan Gandy, where she was talking about not every book is for every reader, and it really just echoes the message that you're putting out there. And we have to come to this place where it's okay to not like each other's things, but we can do so respectfully. And that's an important message.
1,000%. And I think that it is hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, because books are a particularly like vulnerable type of art, I think, for a writer, because you work, you know, there's a 137-ish thousand words in this one book, right, that I wrote. And that's like a lot of words and a lot of time spent pouring pieces of myself into it. And so anybody who comes out and is like, wasn't for me, not my cup of tea, you know, it feels personal, but it's not, you know, it's not like they're really saying like, Gretchen, you suck. I hate you. They're just like, you know, so it's difficult, but it is possible to have that perspective. And I love your interview with Jordan, because I think that it just bears repeating all the time that if they didn't like it, they weren't your target demographic. Your target demographic are the people who like your book, you know, like whether or not you think that or that they are or not. So I really, really enjoyed hearing her perspective on all of that, for sure. I just need to like tattoo it backwards on my forehead so I see it every time.
I have to ask you the question that I try to ask every guest. What's your bookish hot take?
You know, it's honestly an excellent segue, because it's kind of related to this topic.
Okay.
I don't know how hot of a take it really is, but my hot take is that authors should not be reviewing other authors' books. And I actually do think that it's a little controversial, because people are really passionate about leaving reviews, and they are really like, I was a reader first. Like, that's what inspired me to want to write and want to be my, you know, tell my story and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that like authors can't talk about books, obviously, or like promote the books that they love. But I think it's a really, really slippery slope when it comes to like being an author and having my books on Goodreads, and also like reviewing books on Goodreads and critically, you know. It's also, I think, a little bit different if you were to be like, just, you know, lauding the books that you're like super in love with. Like, these are my, you know, 6-star S-tier reads, and like having your list or whatever. Like, of course. And everyone's allowed to have their opinions about things. And you should always, you know, have your circle and your community of people that you want to be like, oh my God, I just read this book and I need to talk about it with somebody because it was like so bad or whatever. But, you know, on the topic of like professionalism, or just kind of like how things change once you step behind the curtain, you know, and put forth your own work into the world, I think it is really tricky. I would equate it to like being at like a day job and walking around the office and like telling people how they're doing at their job. Like, you know, like walking into someone's cubicle and being like, you know, you're really not doing a very good job at blah, 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 you know, and then just like walking away or whatever. Like, it's never going to foster a good sense of community with your coworkers and your colleagues. And all authors are kind of colleagues with one another. Like, you know, in the same way that I guess like I'm Rebecca Yaros's colleague, like that I am like colleagues with the CEO of my company. Like, you know, obviously very different levels, but yeah, I feel pretty strongly about that, actually. I tend to not feel very strongly about a lot of things. I tend to be like, I see it from both sides for a lot of things, but that's my little hill.
It's, and I'll be completely honest, I don't agree with you, but that is the beauty of what I'm trying to create on this podcast, is where we can talk about those things, and we can still be friends and still have different opinions and have this conversation. And I think it's also really important to bring that up, because there will be other listeners and other readers that do agree with you as well. And I think it's great that they can actually look at you, Gretchen, and go, hey, she feels the same way that we do. Like, that's really cool that I'm actually being represented there as well. That's a theme that just keeps coming up in this episode, isn't it?
Being seen, I love it. Yes. I mean, honestly, ultimately, everybody is a human and mostly adult, probably. And so, like, you get to make the decisions that feel good and feel right for you. And if that involves, like, you are a really active reviewer on Goodreads or whatever, and you want to keep being able to share your opinions, like, again, like, you do you kind of thing.
Yeah.
struggled a little bit at the beginning, but when I really knew that I was going back into wanting to write, I went through Goodreads and I deleted all of my reviews because I was like, you know what, I'll keep it as a book tracker, but it's not going to be something that I want to like just have other people being like, you know, Gretchen's a little critical of this book and it happens to be the similar genre to she writes. So like, what was her real motivation for feeling this way? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, there's a lot of elements that go into it, I think.
So where I do think I can kind of see we agree on that part is, for me, I'm all about not being cruel in reviews. So I can go, for example, I really love this book. I would have liked to see a little bit more world building on places X, Y, Z, is a lot kinder than going, you know what, this was shit. Do you know what I mean? Like it just, I think it's the way we give feedback, and I do believe that giving feedback is an art form not many people have mastered. So in that sense, I can agree with you, where if you have got nothing nice to say, then please don't say it, because you don't need to go shit all over everyone else's books. What's the saying Americans have? Don't yuck someone's yum.
Yep, that's it. Don't yuck someone else's yum. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yes, and it's so funny because I literally will like hear my 7-year-old daughter like say that phrase. Be like, "Don't yuck someone's yum, mommy." Like, you got it, kid. Yes. No, I mean, it's like I said, it's tricky. I mean, it's a hot take for a reason, right? There's going to be people who quite strongly feel opposite. And I think that that's fine. For me, it was just important to like create that delineation, I think, between like, I'm always going to be a reader. Like I read voraciously. Well, I mean, not like at this exact moment because I'm working on book 2 and my book just came out last week. But generally speaking, I love consuming the written word. Nothing motivates me as a writer more than reading other work. Both work that I'm like, wow, this was incredible, and I aspire to be like this, and work that I'm like, you know, like I feel like I could do better than that. You know what I mean? And like you see it on both sides. So I'm always going to be a reader, and like, you know, if you ever want to know what I feel, you know, what star rating I would give a book, you can always DM me and I'll tell you. I'm just not going to post it for myself.
Well, I would love to know from you, what's an underrated fantasy book that you believe deserves far more love than it's been getting?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. I should have like prepared an answer. I feel like there's so many. I saw that like Carissa Broadbent's Daughter of No Worlds just got picked up for a trad re-release. And that is one of my favorite trilogies like ever. I read Serpent and the Wings of Night first, before I read Daughter of No Worlds, and I was like, this was my like reading ACOTAR and then reading Throne of Glass and be like, this, you know, I guess it just kind of painted to myself like I am a fantasy heavy romantic kind of person versus like a romance, like less fantasy kind of person. So I love that. I think that there's so many amazing books by like true indies that are like starting to pick up, but you know, we're constantly like wanting to lift up other, you know, things and seeing what's going to kind of become the next whatever the case is. And I love seeing that too. So it's really hard question for me to answer, actually. My Kindle is like really bogged down with amazing books. But yeah.
But I actually blank whenever someone asks me for a recommendation, because I'm like, I've read all the incredible books. How do I pick just one? And then I kind of go into, rather tell me what your reading preference is. Tell me, like, what is your vibe? What are you in a mood for? Because then I can kind of like whittle down a recommendation from there, because I tend to read more darker fantasy, which I know is not everyone's cup of tea. So I actually have a Bookstagram friend where she's like hardcore romantasy girly, like hardcore. So whenever we talk about recommendations, I never recommend the stuff that would be my first read, because I know she's not going to like it. I try and recommend them because I read romantasy as well. Like I do. It's just not my first choice.
Yeah.
But I actually try to recommend that to her that way. And I actually helped to find her new favorite author that way, which was like kind of...
Oh my gosh, there's like no better feeling than recommending a book and then the person actually really loving it. Like it's just like,
I swear, I would put that skill on my CV. Like, I can help people find their book recommendations.
But it's so true. Just like, I feel like maybe it's like, yeah, give me like a little bit of a narrowing down of categories. Like, you know, what are you looking for? Are you looking for like mermaids? Because I read of Song and Scepter by Liesl West, and I thought that was a great, like, spicy mermaid, you know, romantasy. Do you like fairy tale retellings? Because Janessa Wren's Heir of Sun and Moon is like a Rapunzel-inspired kind of retelling, which is really amazing. Do you like really heavy political fantasy? Because Neve Rose' Fate of the Five is like this epic 8 POV like tale, and like all of these, and it's so cool for me to see my fellow indies and like starting to see like them branch into the pockets of readership that where these books are starting to get championed as well. And my list also of books that I want to read is so long at this point. I just know that I need to like dive further and further in. But those, off the top of my head, those are 3 other ones that I think definitely deserve to be lifted up.
And I think they're all on my TBR as well. So great taste there.
Hey, look at that.
Before we wrap up this episode, I do have to ask, what can we expect next from your author career?
Well, I am actively working on the sequel to Smoke and Scar right now, and I'm aiming for a fall 2025. So hopefully we'll have the next leg of this story out by the end of this year. And it is planned as a trilogy. So my plan is to complete this trilogy before kind of stepping into my next things. Again, kind of knowing how my brain works, and if I like let myself veer off on these like, oh, this would make a good book. Like, this would make a good book. Like, if I let myself do that, I worry that I wouldn't finish this story, which is, you know, certainly my priority. But I think that one of the things that I'm most excited about, really fully diving back into authordom or whatever, is knowing that, like, I can write whatever I want. Like, that's a lot of power in like this indie space, being like, if I want to write a contemporary rom-com after I finish this trilogy, like, I'm gonna do that. If I want to write another sweeping fantasy epic, but like about, you know, sea gods and you know, like this kind of like piratey world or something, like, I could do that. Like, there's like no limitations on what I can do other than like time and the effort and energy that I want to put into it. And I think that that's pretty cool, and something that I really want to explore, like genre diversification, seeing what comes out, because I really just love writing and I love words, and I am just so beyond thrilled and grateful that other people seem to like the stuff that I write. So
well, your passion definitely shows through. And I think, you know, being an indie, that's one of the things that really sets us apart, is that we are authentic and we are passionate. And I completely relate to you on that level, where I specifically decided to go indie because I wanted the creative control. And if I want to write a epic fantasy 600 pages tomorrow, then that's what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm not going to, but like,
yes.
And it's like, as well now, I'm just writing a few blurbs for my upcoming books. And I mean, one is like so far in the future, I'm like, but I want to write it now because I can, and I'm going to. And I think that power is so cool. We can talk about my control freak tendencies at
No, that's amazing. I've always had so much respect for, like, when I scroll over an author's Instagram and they have like their whole plan like lined out for like 7 books from now or whatever, and these are like all of their works in progress and stuff like that. I'm like, that's incredible. I'm not there yet, but I do have some things percolating. I just am very focused on my current series.
Well, if anyone's listening and they are loving your vibe and they want to connect more with you, or they want to support you, what are the best ways that they could do that?
Yeah, so I'm definitely most active on Instagram. So I'm at Gretchen Writes Books on Instagram. I also do have TikTok. I'm at Gretchen Powell-Fox on TikTok, and I have a Discord actually as well, which is linked on my like link in bio, or if you go to GretchenPowell-Fox.com. And I love connecting with people there as well. But yeah, I'm basically very accessible, probably to the chagrin of my family. So literally hit me up anytime. I love talking about my books in general, publishing, writing, like literally all the things. I am just here to connect with folks. So.
Cool. Well, I will pop some of your links on the episode description so that whoever wants to just connect with you that way, that they can have it in the most easy way possible. But Gretchen, this has been an incredible episode. You have been an incredible guest. Thank you so much for attending. And I can't wait for your episode to go live and for everyone to see what you have been getting up to.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was so much fun for me. I loved chatting with you. And yeah, this was really just a great time. So thank you.